Boys and girls, ladies and germs, welcome back to the Firefighters Podcast. Hope you're doing well, hope you're staying safe, hope you've been kicking ass and taking names. Today my guest on the podcast is Jerry Sanford. Jerry is a retired firefighter from FDNY and author of It Started With a Helmet. This is a retired firefighter's return to New York City the day before 9/11. Now that's a little bit of a spoiler alert for today's episode. It is so important to acknowledge our partners of the podcast, the people that are making this possible. So the big thanks to supporting today's episode is our partner, William Wood Watches. William Wood Watches are a luxury British watch brand. But what's so unique about this brand is the way it honours firefighters and makes innovative use of recycled fire service equipment right here from the UK. There's so many brands on the market focusing on sustainability, recyclability, upcycling. It's actually such a refreshing and authentic story about something like William Wood Watches. It is so much more of a personal brand. Johnny and the guys are based in London, but they ship international, so listeners from all over the world can get in on William Wood Watches. There's so many small and significant details in these watches as well, from the Valiant to the Chivalrous. They create in the different colours, the dials, from the red watch to the blue to the green, to the crest, the helmet emblem. But the favourite thing for me, and the thing that always gets noted on my watch, is the strap. Now again, whether it's from titanium wear, blue hose, or the red or the yellow, all of these have their own unique aspects to it, but they still have that coloration because they've done 10 years operationally on the front line. These are hoses that have actually been out there, being thrown down highways for RTCs, been hauled up the sides of high-rise buildings. It really is just such a unique part of William Wood Watches, and we feel so privileged to have them as a partner on the podcast. Now, yes, William Wood Watches is a private company, but in 2020 they gave £12,500 to firefighter charity donations, and in 2021 alone they have donated over £20,000 to firefighter charities. So if you're a frontline operator that is head over heels in love with the fire service, if you are looking for a gift for a retiree, for a close friend, for a family member, for a watch member, then head over to williamwoodwatches.com and check them out. I love my watch. I've had it for like 2 years now. I've got the London Fire Brigade red fire hose on mine, so go and check it out. You will not regret it. And a massive thanks to Johnny and the team for their continued support. We do cover some sensitive subjects in and around the attacks of 9/11 in today's episode, so just a little bit of a heads up. Thanks for coming back. Thanks for being here on the Firefighters Podcast. It is my absolute pleasure to invite you to join us in on this conversation. So without further ado, buckle up for safety, and I will see you crazy cats on the other side. It's a good job one of us knows what we're doing. Sorry.
No. We're always early because we can't trust ourselves.
Couldn't find my glasses.
Brother, we don't need them. Don't worry about it. Jerry Sanford, welcome to the Firefighters Podcast. How you doing, my man?
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here this morning with you guys.
Man, it's an absolute pleasure to have you. I actually, I don't want to sort of speak ill of any of our previous guests, but speaking to retired firefighters is honestly one of the favorite parts of this, because A, you have such great stories, and B, there's no way of sort of worrying about what your boss is going to say, because you're free as a bird and you've got some incredible experience. Honestly, right. Mate, is that part where you speak to people and they're like, oh God, I'm not sure if my station commander or my station manager is going to worry about this, that, or the other.
Yeah.
When somebody's about to retire or when they're retired, it's just the best stories.
Right. You're right, brother.
Very few people, though, have gone as far as your good self as to actually putting it down in paper. Now, obviously, we're on today sort of talking about the book that you've written first and foremost, but also your incredible length of experience. So you brought it out. When did the book come out? It's called It Started With a Helmet, and it's a retired firefighter's return to New York City after the day before 9/11. When does it come out?
In the latter part of June, just a couple of months ago.
Yeah, so I was going to say, we can order it off Amazon. I think I saw it.
Correct. Yes, you can.
That is a step sort of beyond most of our guests, because a lot of people have some incredible stories, but to go so far as to actually put it down into writing must have been a really, really challenging sort of process.
Well, I've known Chris now for about 6.5 years, and during that time, we've traveled quite a bit, and especially when we go to New York City, I never stop talking about, I take it to this firehouse, we go here, I remember this fire, that. And unbeknownst to me, she had secretly was taping my stories on her phone. Oh. So all along, she never said anything to me. And until this past February, she said, "Grandpa, I want you to sit down, and if you'll shut up because you're a loud man, and allow me to show you something." And she had typed 12,000 words into this beautiful, short little novel about I found a fire helmet here in Naples, Florida, and I immediately knew it belonged in New York City because of the front piece. And we returned it back to the South Bronx on the day before 9/11.
Wow. I mean, so take us back, because first of all, I love the fact that you had a member of your family do that, because I think that is probably something that most people would never take the time to do. But however, we all love sitting around it, whether it's just at the watch table on the station or whether it's sitting with a member of the family who's in the emergency services. The stories that you get to experience and stuff as a frontline firefighter are so unique. You get to go behind all kind of closed doors, and you get to be in situations, life-saving, life-changing situations for people. But how incredible was it to know that, a member of your family had taken the time to put all that down? They obviously thought a lot of your experiences.
Yes, Chris did. She recorded it all. I have a whole bunch of stories. And so she put them down. And it's about 12 chapters. And I was very happy that she would have taken the time, unbeknownst to me, to record all of my a lot of my experiences that I had remembered over my, I guess I'm in the helping people business now over 50 years. So I've got a lot of stories.
So when did you actually join the fire department?
One triggers another.
When did you join the fire department?
In 1968.
In the 60s?
Wow. 1968, yeah. I was a police officer in 1965 for 3 years.
We've had a couple of guests. Why did you switch? Because we've had a couple of guests that went from police officers to firefighters.
I guess police work, they called me first. So I knew that my time in the police department would count towards my pension years later when I switched over to the fire department. And that's very true. That's what happened. But I don't know if I was made out to be a police officer. They have a very, very hard job.
Yeah.
I mean, who likes to get a summons? Who likes to get arrested?
No.
And so I was very, and I had the thrill of riding on some fire engines in the early 60s with some friends, took me to the firehouse. So I really had that in the back of my mind that I really wanted to be a firefighter.
How old were you at that time when you first joined the police department?
I was old. I mean, normally you go into we call it civil service here when you're 21, but I was 27 years old.
Wow!
And that when I joined the police department, and that's old. I mean, I was married, I had a son, and I had just bought a new house. You talk about crazy. The police salary in 1965 was $7,032.
Annually, 7,000.
Actually,
Jesus.
$7,032. And I had a house I just built. Like I said, didn't have any grass. We ate a lot of hot dogs, a lot of hamburgers, a lot of beans, and we had a baby. Glenn was born Glenn was 3 years old. So it was tough. It was tough. Like I said, I was one of the oldest ones in the police academy because I was 27 years old.
Mm. What did you do before you joined the police department? Because, I mean, like you say, you'd already you'd grown a family. That was more, I don't want to skip past that because that's more of a risk than I think people are willing to say. A lot of people hear about firefighters and emergency and they go, oh, well, you obviously found your passion when you were young. And I know firefighters that joined in their 30s and even that joined in their 40s and finally found something they love. And I don't think it's easy no matter what age you did it.
No. What happened was I was working on Wall Street to answer your question. And we hired this fireman as part-time. So I got to be pretty good friends with Jimmy. And he said to me, Con, why don't you come and ride with us? And tomorrow night I'm working. So I went to the firehouse, and sure enough, boy, I got the bug. Flying through the streets of Manhattan, lights and sirens, boy. And then Wall Street was kind of sagging back in the 60s. And I worked for a small brokerage company, and they weren't doing too well. So I started taking civil service tests. And I took the police test, I took the fire test, and I must have scored higher on the police test. You put on a list. Yeah. And I got called first for the police department, and I switched over in 1960. I left Wall Street in 1965 and became a police officer.
So what sort of testing did you have to do when you joined back in the 60s?
It's all about the job. It's multiple choice, and they give you all kinds of situations. And, what would you do in this situation, what would you do in that situation? How do you handle deranged people? How do you all that kind of stuff. And it was very difficult. But it taught me, being a police officer, it taught me about people and life. I saw a lot of things back then that really disturbed me, how people treat people, and that just wasn't in my cup of tea. I just couldn't, I didn't realize I could do this the rest of my life. So when the fire department, a similar test, they ask you everything to do with fire service. And so when I got called in '68, I switched over.
I think people that don't work in frontline services miss out on a lot of. I always think it makes you very humble when you go and see some of the circumstances that some people are living in, and like you say, the state that the way that other people are treating some people. Like you said about the police, my utmost respect goes out to the police, because ultimately, whenever we arrive, people are pretty much always pleased to see us. We're very rarely ruining anybody's day. But for the police, somebody might be thrilled you're there, but most of the time you're going to ruin somebody's day. Yeah, you're going to keep us all safe, but I have a massive amount of admiration, because it's not easy. But you saw the light, as it were. You were able to ride on the back of a few of the pumps. And where did you end up serving?
Police department. I was on the Lower East Side in Manhattan. And it was mainly, the population was Jewish and Puerto Rican.
Okay. And
here I am, a white Irish Catholic kid from Staten Island, and I get assigned to the 7th precinct. I mean, I'm looking at people walking, with different dress, different languages, So it was very different, very different.
Very challenging.
Oh, challenging, yeah. And then I switched over to the fire department, and I got assigned to Ladder 23, which is up in Harlem, 139th Street and Amsterdam Avenue. And here's another kind of cultural shock. Here, like I said, a white Irish Catholic kid. I wind up all in black Harlem.
Yeah.
Everything up there was black. But you know what? I worked with wonderful people up there, wonderful firefighters that taught me the job. What you learn in school, you might as well forget about it, kid. And I was 30 years old now. Don't forget, I was old. I wasn't a young kid, and I was an ex-cop. So they were trying to break my chops, you know what I mean? with all kinds of different funny things. They said, hey, wait a minute. Hey, I was a cop for 3 years.
Yeah.
Pull that crap on somebody else.
I'm not some fresh daisy, You can't pull that stuff on me.
I mean, we did it with humor. I mean, with fun, But, I couldn't wait to go. People say, what was the best day of your job? Every day. Every day. When I got out of bed, I knew I was going to the firehouse.
Yeah.
And boy, I tell you, to put on that New York City Fire Department uniform, I can't begin to tell you the pride that you have in your job. Yeah. It's incredible.
I remember when we were speaking before we sort of came on with our episode, you said, you sort of speak back about those times and said you were working during the war years, that we were so busy back then. It was sort of call after call after call, day after day. Is that the way you recall it?
Yes, I do. It was from the late '60s all the way into the '70s. There was a number of incidents, some unrest in the country. There were blackouts, and there was looting and rioting. Yeah, that was pretty scary times going to work. I remember a number of occasions we would respond in convoy fashion. I mean, we would have a police car, a battalion chief, an engine, a ladder, and then another police car behind us.
Jesus.
And we would just ride. We would pass fires because they'd be throwing stuff off the roof of the buildings. Now this is what I can't understand about. Here we're trying to go in there and save you, and you're throwing garbage cans and garbage off the roof at you.
Yeah.
But that's just how society was back then, I'm sure we're never going to see those days again. I pray that we don't. It was just but that didn't happen a lot. But it was just, I just remember that during the war years, how crazy it was.
Yeah, I agree with you. My sincere hope is that we never see those times again. I feel like sometimes we slip into there. Sometimes I feel like we're driving down a bit of a narrow road, and sometimes when you take your hands off the wheel, it slips into the undergrowth. It slips off the road, and then the back wheel spins and you come back on. I feel like we we're doing a little bit of that in the last couple of years. I don't know if the pandemic's caused it, but you see these, those sort of scenes that you described there. Every now and again around the world, you're seeing them flare up. And I think it's difficult for a lot of people to remain. I mean, you spoke there, right at the beginning of our conversation about when you just got your home and you just got your child and you were, having to ration and sort of, not spend too much and sort of look after each other. I feel like now we're in a state of entitlement where, people want their first home at 20 years of age to be a 3-4 bedroom house with a massive yard. And I think that when you see that now, how does that feel? I mean, I know it's not something we were going to speak about, but that must be a complete different world.
It's a different world. I mean, now everybody has a car. Back in my day, people say to me, "What was your first car?" I said, "Well, it ran every 25 minutes. It was green and gray, and it had numbers on the front. And it was a 108, 113. I said, it was a bus. That was my first car." And I said, and then I had a lot of boats. I had yachts. You know what they were called? The Staten Island Ferry. They ran every half hour. So, I mean, when back in the day, it's very different.
If I said to my kids now, "Oh, you could catch a bus to school or you could get a bus into the city," they'd look at me like I'd just thrown my own human poo at them or something like that. They would look at me totally going out like, "What, on a bus or on a train?" Like, yeah, or walk. Yeah, I would walk everywhere. I'd be when I got my bike, man. When I first got my bike, I was free. I wouldn't mind cycling 10 or 15 miles to go and see some friends. Now, you ask somebody to walk a mile, they look at you going out.
You're right, Pete. It's a whole different ballgame.
That's crazy. So, talking about a whole different ballgame, what was the basic training like back then? Because I love these sort of stories because I feel like we're not as tough as we used to be on basic training. But I'd be interested to hear what it was like for you.
Well, it was pretty. I just about made the weight. You had to be 140 pounds, and I'm a slim guy. I was never a big.
Really, you had
man.
You had to be a certain weight now back then.
Yes. Oh, yes. There was a height and a weight restriction back then.
You see now they'd be completely the other way. Was there a maximum weight limit? Sorry to interrupt you there, because now I feel like we'd struggle keeping people under the weight. There seems to be people struggle with eating too much food these days.
Oh yeah, yes. I believe there still is now, Pete. I think there is restrictions.
Okay.
But all I could do was make 140 pounds. I mean, I was, and they paid you off, and I was with a guy. Georgie Donovan. He weighed about 145. I weighed about 140, and but it was interesting. In fact, I have a funny. I'm not too much of a gun guy. I mean, so that was the first gun I was ever issued to me as a police officer, and we're down at the range, and I am shaking like hell. I'm trying to hold this gun, and I'm thinking, what in the name of God? So we have these things over your ears, to protect you. And they're screaming, "Ready on the right, ready on the left, fire!" And everybody fired. My God, I'm shaking in my pants. And my target comes back, and it's as pure as the driven snow. There's nothing. It's still white, no holes in it.
Had you actually fired anything off, or was the whole thing just too overwhelming for you to actually make some shots? Or
no, okay, we fought. It just was, and so now we fire again, and the target comes back, and it's just as empty. So the sergeant comes over and he lifts up my thing off my ear, and he says, "If you don't start hitting the target, I'm going to give you an effing spear." That was pretty funny. So, but I qualified, and there I was. I left Wall Street, and I went to the 7th precinct in Lower Manhattan. And like I said earlier, Pete, it taught me all about people.
Yeah.
And then when I switched over to the fire department, it was in the training was very rough. It was in the summer. And summer in New York City when it's 90, 92, and 90, it was hot.
I bet it was crazy, yeah.
And the battalion chief who was in charge of the training academy, he hated ex-cops like me that switched over to the fire department. Hated us. So if everybody ran around the track 5 times, us ex-cops, we ran around it 10 times. If everybody did 40 push-ups, we did 80 push-ups. So he did everything he could to break our chops. Pardon my language.
I thought they'd want him. I thought they'd be like, you've seen the dark side. Okay, you've come over. You've realised what you should be doing. But there was a big thing against ex-cops, was there?
Oh boy, he didn't like us at all. And of course, we stuck together, us ex-cops, And but it was very difficult. They taught, and of course, the tools back then, Pete, were much different. We didn't have power saws. No. We didn't have tower ladders. People ask me now, what is the biggest change? And I think the innovation of bringing in the tower ladders, where you could put firefighters in a bucket, and you could raise them up, and water would come out, and the fact that you wouldn't be trying to ventilate a roof with an axe, and it would be bouncing off these layers of tar. Jeez. And now they came along with a partner saw, where all you did was pull the handle, and boy, you had a saw, and you could open up and ventilate much quicker than you did with an axe. So, we called it Proby School, short for probationary. Yeah. It was rough.
How long was it?
I think we were 3 months. I think I was at June, July, August. We got out in September. So it was 3 months, and it was grueling. And you had homework and all, but they kept you in shape. I mean, first of all, it's a young man's job. You have to be in physical and mental shape. Yeah. I mean, you pull up, everybody's running out of the building and you're running in. You're saying, wait a minute, what's going on here? So you have to be mentally prepared for the job. I'd do it again for nothing, Pete. I really would. It was the greatest thing I ever did was becoming a New York City firefighter.
So you did 29 years eventually, didn't you, in the fire department? But even after leaving, you actually decided to rejoin as a fire control operator. How different was it to sort of change roles when you came out, and what made you want to get back into it?
When I retired from New York City, Pete, I was in the press office. My last 9 years, I served I was a public information officer, and then I was the press secretary. So I dealt with the media my last 9 years, and then I retired, came down here to Naples, Florida, and found out that I went to get a CPR refresher course at a high school one Saturday. And a woman got up. She was in charge of emergency medical services. So, and I said, I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to ask her for a job. So after we were done with the procedures and everything, I asked her, I said, I showed her my business card, and it was from New York City. And she was very impressed. I said, look, let's not get impressed here. I just want a job. I said, look, she said, well, I think I know, I have a public information officer. So anyway, she called him over. His name was George. And we chatted, and he says, I know a fire district down here that needs a public information officer.
Wow.
So I said, this is how naive I was, Pete. I thought that Naples had one fire department, but in fact, there's like 10 of them down here. Yeah. Everybody has their little fiefdom. There's all different departments. Anyway, I reached out, and the chief of the North Naples Fire Department called me on Monday, had a nice talk with my wife while I was on the golf course. And when I came home, she said to me, Grandpa, I think you got a job.
Wow.
This chief called, and it's funny, he's from Massachusetts and we're in Florida. Anyway, he wants you to know, hey, call him. So I call him. He says, you want a job? I said, yeah. Well, come in. So within the next day, Pete, and of course I put my Madison Avenue suit on, my white shirt, my red tie. I mean, when you used to go in a city hall in New York City with the mayor and all, that's how you dress. That's your
absolutely.
Dress. So I went in with my resume, and people are looking at me as I'm walking down the hall. And so he takes my resume, he puts it on the end of his desk, and he said, hey, you want to listen to some Brooklyn radio? So I said, okay. So he turns the computer on. Next thing you know, I'm listening to the fire engines in Brooklyn, and I'm in Naples, Florida. So he said, after chatting about 20, 30 minutes, where I worked and all, he said to me, you see that Crown Victoria out there in the parking lot? I said, yeah. He said, that's your car. So I was hired almost after a half-hour interview, Pete.
Wow.
So I unretired after 29 years in New York, and I became the public information officer here in Florida for the North Naples Fire Department. And I did that until 2018. I just retired.
Congratulations.
So I just, if you can, what I say is, if you can handle the media in New York City, you can handle the media anywhere.
What was it like working with the media in New York City? I mean, I just feel like it must be so intense. They must just be so demanding of your time. I mean, that might sound harsh, but what was it like?
Pete, it was like a war every day. But you know, once they got to know you, I was broken in by the press secretary of Mayor Koch. His name was Tom Kelly, and he came in and he said, "Hey kid, I heard about you." I said, "Oh yeah?" He said, "You know what? You know how much I know about the fire department? I know the fire engines are red. That's it. I don't know anything else." So he says, "What do you know about being a reporter?" I said, "About as much as you know about the fire department."
Perfect.
Said, "Okay, we're going to be the Tom and Jerry show." So he taught me how to be a reporter, how to be like one of the media people. Yeah. And once I knew and got to know how they worked, we got along great. I mean, not every day was good. You know, there was time, but once they gained my respect, that was the important thing.
Yeah.
So when I pulled up to a fire and the media was there, and I had a bright red jacket, I still have it here in my closet, and on the back, it's all red, but in yellow, big letters, it has FDNY Press across the back. So when they saw Jerry pull up, they knew they were going to get their shot. They may get an interview, but they had enough in their can. They got enough film so they could go on live themselves.
Yeah,
and that was the most important thing, Pete, if you follow me. In other words, you give the media something. Yeah. You got to give them something because they have a job.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You've got to respect them. You've got to know that, you know, they've got their job to do as well. And as long as you build that rapport with them, I suppose, and they know that you're credible, you're honest, you've got a great bit of authenticity because you've been in the job yourself, you will give them what they want, but as long as they respect your time and your privacy and know that when you feel it's appropriate, you'll give them what they need as long as they don't go hassling you first.
Right. You know, I'm not one of these pat yourself on the back guys. But when they saw me at the scene, they knew they were going to get a shot.
Yeah.
They knew they were going to get in, as small as it might be, but it was enough, Pete, that they could put up their stick and go live from the scene.
Yeah.
So, you know, it was interesting, you know, but I mean, it just took me a little while to get with the program, if you follow.
Absolutely. So was it during your time in that role that you first came across the leather helmet that we spoke about at the beginning?
Yes, down here. I'm now hired down in Naples. This is 2000, and I get hired on May 15th of 2000. And about a month later, the chief who hired me said, "You know, we have a fire helmet here from New York City in one of our fire stations." I said, "How did that happen?" He says, "Oh, a man walked in. It was his father's helmet. He was a New York City firefighter way back in the day.
Oh, wow.
He didn't want the helmet any longer, so he gave it to us." I said, "Wow, that's okay." So we drove over, and sure enough, up on the wall is this old black leather helmet, and it's got 4-2 in red on the face piece.
Wow.
I took it. I saw it immediately, and I knew that it came from the South Bronx, from Ladder 42 in New York City.
It's so strange that the family didn't want that anymore. I mean,
he didn't want it. The son, which I thought was a little strange, the son didn't want the helmet, and he donated it to the fire department here in Naples.
It's good of him to give it back to the fire department, though, because, like you said, those sorts of memorabilia. I mean, you know, they can go on to really, you know, as we're here today, you know, make for some incredible stories to their origins, and it takes you back to a whole other time, doesn't it?
It does. So I said to him, "I know that's the fire commissioner, my former fire commissioner. I know that's his house." So we go back, and I call him up, and I get him on the phone, and I said, "Tommy," I said, "I got a helmet here," and I tell him about 42, and he said, "Boy, I'd love to have you bring it back." He said, "But the house is being renovated now." Now this is like July of 2000.
Yeah.
So he said, "I tell you what, we'll keep in touch, and I'll let you know when the firehouse is going to be finished, reconstruction, and you can bring the helmet back then." Okay, so advance that to about a year, and in August they called me and said, "You better start making your plans. The house is all set, and it's going to be rededicated on September 10th,
Wow.
2001." Now, September 10th, 2001, it didn't mean anything to anybody.
No.
It was just another day. So September 8th, I got the man. His name was George Kuntz Jr. It was his father's helmet. And we got him and the helmet and 2 chiefs and myself. And we flew to New York City on the 8th of September.
Oh, wow.
They wanted to go where I worked, so I took them to Harlem and Red Hook and Brooklyn. And then the morning of September 10th, we wound up at the firehouse at Ladder 42 with the helmet. And there were hundreds of men that came back that worked in Engine 73 and Ladder 42. And on the apparatus floor, they had built an altar. And one of our Catholic chaplains, Father Michael Judge, was going to say Mass. Well, who would have known, but that was the last Mass that Father Judge said, because he was one of the first fire department members that was killed the next day at the towers,
Jesus.
along with 7 or 8 of my other friends that were at this ceremony, Pete. So they cut the ribbon to the fire. Mayor Giuliani was there. I got reunited with him and some other politicians that I knew. And then we gave the helmet back to the captain. And we went next door to a social club where we had food and good cheer. And then we left and we went back to LaGuardia Airport the evening of September 10th. We were supposed to fly back nonstop back to Fort Myers.
Yeah.
But a storm hit New York, Pete, and it closed all 3 New York airports the evening of September 10th.
Wow.
LaGuardia, Kennedy, and Newark. And here we are, stuck at LaGuardia. Our luggage had got on the plane, and the only thing we had was my phone. So we see that our flight has now been, instead of delayed, it's been canceled. So we get booked on a flight the morning of September 11th. So I called my daughter. She came, picked us up. We stayed overnight for a couple hours at her house. And the morning of September 11th, it was a beautiful blue sky. I'm sure you and everybody around the world have seen that sky.
Yeah.
The morning of September 11th.
Yeah.
And we took off. And we were changing planes in Pittsburgh when I was called to a restaurant where there was a television on. And I looked up, and that was the first sight that I saw, Pete, was that a plane had crashed into one of the towers. A feeling came over me I can't even try to describe, because I knew my brother firefighters would be going in and going up when everybody was trying to come out. So
I mean, that was an act of terror that had never, ever been experienced anywhere, ever.
Never.
You know, it's never been seen before and never been seen again. I mean,
we get on the plane. He backs it out about 30 yards, stops the plane. The pilot says, "Okay, everybody off. The FAA has grounded all flights." So there we are in pandemonium, people running, screaming through Pittsburgh Airport. Pete, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I was like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
So I said, I don't know about you guys, but I'm not staying in Pittsburgh. So let's get a car. So we all got on a rental car line, and it took us about an hour. By the time we got a car and got out of the airport, it was pretty bad.
Yeah.
When
did you first realize? I mean, when did you see, when you saw that second plane hit? And it was sort of became evident that it was a form of attack. You say that people were, I mean, just beside themselves. What was it like to try and gain a sort of grip on reality in any capacity? Because you've served you've served in the emergency services. You've seen behind the scenes. You've seen what the control staff do. You've seen what the press people do. What were your thoughts in and around, the people that were going to be committed? What was going to be required? Were you even able to comprehend it? I never could. Even to this day, I've no idea what I'd have done in that situation.
No, it was very, very difficult, Pete, to, what's happening, I know what our forces were doing. They were trying to, I'm sure that they were summoning everybody to get down there and help. It was just, it was tough. It was hard to believe what I saw, what was happening. I can't put it in any other way. That how could that happen here? How could that happen in the United States to us?
I know.
And it was just a trying times. Awful.
So what were your actions after that? What happened over the next few days?
Well, then we got back to Naples, and the following week, my wife and I flew to Philadelphia to attend a christening of our grandson, and then that was, sorry, just to interrupt you there, that was a brave move. Was there any apprehension around flying during that time? Because some people must have been petrified. Yeah, there was only about 8 people or 9 people on the plane. Yeah. That's when the FAA allowed people to fly, and everybody was looking at each other very suspiciously. Yeah. Like, who are they?
Did you or your partner or your family, did you have any fears that this was going to be a repeated event? Or because even now it's still one of the safest ways to travel. It's far dangerous just getting in your vehicle. We get in our cars every single day, and so many people, thousands or hundreds of thousands, die on the road every day. It's still one of the safest ways to travel, but so close to the event, it must have been surreal.
Oh yeah, it was surreal. It was we were very, very nervous, needless to say, flying. Then shortly after that, I was able to reach the fire commissioner, and I went back to New York, and I volunteered back in the press office.
Wow.
Dealing with the world. This time it was the worldwide media, setting up all the TV show, all the scenes and everything that everybody wanted to go into a firehouse.
Yeah, I'll bet.
We couldn't do that. I could go into a firehouse and offer my sympathy to my brothers because I was a firefighter.
What made you want to reach back out to the commissioner? What made you want to get back in? Because, you've been retired for so long. Yes, it makes perfect sense to me. You've got such a wealth of knowledge. And obviously, they tragically lost, I think it was 343 firefighters, I think they lost. So they clearly needed people, and I say that in, of course, the most respectful manner. But it's still a massive decision for you to fly all the way back there and offer your support. And was that common? Was there a lot of people coming back into the service?
Yeah.
Did you see anybody else that you'd worked with before, or that had been retired a long time?
Yes, there were a lot. Look, that was my job. That was my whole life, Pete. And I would have went down to the pile and help dig, but I didn't. I felt I could help the job by doing what I did best, and that was the media.
Yeah.
So I was thrust back in to the role I had done. That I retired in '97. So it was just give me a microphone and give me the press, and I ran with it. And I wasn't. There were many retired firefighters, chief officers, and command staff that had retired that all came back. It's in our blood. That's our job. We're in the fire family.
You were 63 at this time, though, weren't you? So what was it like speaking to the press? Because again, you've been used to working with them, but they must have just had a whole different bunch of questions and demands and trying to comprehend and explain the losses that the fire department had experienced.
Yes,
I just can't imagine it.
In fact, they were shocked that I came back. They were like, "Oh my God, Jerry's here," because I had a real great reputation with the working media in New York City.
Yeah.
And if I didn't have the answer for you, I directed you where to get the answer.
Yeah.
So they were really happy, the media, that I was there on the scene, behind the scenes, helping them get their shot.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier, you let them get their shot in and out. Next, you did that. And, but it's just part of me. I had to go back. I told the chief down here, I said, "Chief, I'm going back to New York. I don't care if I lose my job." I said, but when you spend almost 30 years in your city and 3 years as a cop, I had to go back. I just had to go back, Pete.
Yeah.
And, so did the other, I was reunited with men that I hadn't seen in years.
Yeah.
And some of them were digging and looking for their own sons. That's that when you think about it. Yeah, that's when I met them at the pile and I took one look at them and I knew their son was on the job, I mean, it was just, I think there were 8 or 9 fathers that lost their sons on 9/11 that were firefighters that lost their. In fact, one captain, John Vigiano, he had a son that was emergency service cop, and he had another son that was a firefighter, and he lost them both.
Jesus.
Now, you try to digest that, that you lose 2 of your boys, and I don't know if they were ever found, because there are still some missing first responders that were never found, unfortunately, but that's the truth. So it's a very heavy thing for especially now with 20 years. Oh, it's a heavy thing.
It wasn't quick to deal with either. This lasted months, didn't it? The recovery operation and being at ground zero and slowly, and because there was also to kind of go off on a tangent, there was a lot of government services that worked in the towers. There was a number of federal services that worked there, so there was a whole bunch of concerns around data and all that sort of stuff. There must have been a difficult thing to navigate, people worrying about government assets and their business assets, and other people trying to dig for their 2 sons. I just can't imagine the emotional charge that must have been involved in that time.
It was everybody working, everybody down at the pile. I hate that word. They use that. That's the word they use. But on a happier note, I don't know if you can say it's happier. Every day going into the site on West Street, there were hundreds and hundreds of civilians standing on the roadway with signs, "Thank you, and USA, USA."
Yeah.
I'll never forget. That was 20 years ago, but I'll never forget that sight. Pete, New York City, the whole country was like one neighborhood.
Yeah.
Everybody was a New Yorker back then.
Yeah.
You couldn't buy a flag. Every flag, every American flag had been purchased. They were on buildings and cars and people and all. There was just a unity back then where everybody came together.
Is there a strange aspect there? Because I think you make a really great point there in a couple of different ways, and I just want to kind of expand upon it, because nobody ever wishes something like that to happen on any nation. Again, is my hope that nobody wishes that. But whenever we go through tragedies like that, and whenever like a sports team, if we use that as it might be a slightly nicer analogy to go with, if you strike at the heart of it with an iron fist, it tends to assemble the team. It tends to bring everybody together, and you find that as well in times of war. You find it in times of tragedy, that when a collective have a focus that they can all sort of gather under and get behind, it builds, like you say, the whole nation becomes a neighborhood. And I think to myself that back then it must have been that way in many ways. Like you said, neighborhoods and communities were much better at sort of helping each other out and getting together with things, whereas now we feel a lot more detached. We don't, and I don't for one second wish for any of us to descend into nations against nations or anything like that, but there's something really really powerful when you see that patriotic side of any country come out. It's almost like a cleansing. Not that anybody ever wishes for one, but it really sounds like it brought the whole nation together.
It did. And now, Pete, they don't teach 9/11 in the schools. You don't see hardly any flags.
No.
And that's what really bothers me, the fact that the unity and what's happened in this country. But a good thing about our just to jump back to our book, is that we've gotten a number of donations where we're able to send the book to schools, where educators and teachers have reached out to Chris and I and have asked for the books. And we have mailed a number of books out to different school districts throughout the country. And I'm very happy about that. The children, that was 20 years now.
Yeah.
So kids in school, even young teachers are, they were probably very young themselves. And if that's what they're doing now. So
it's important for us to remain, like we said, we shouldn't live in the past, but it's important for us to remain aware of the capacity for evil that exists in the world. and that, you know, there are people out there trained and willing to be on that front line and protect us all from the things that go bump in the night. It's always important to remember that. I think, you know, whilst we have a desire for everybody to get along and nobody to get offended by absolutely anything anymore, I don't think that's entirely realistic. And I think we can send a lot of children sleepwalking and blindfolded into adulthood, not realizing that these evils are still out there.
Yes, correct.
So after you'd written the book, you say you've gone through this incredible experience and you've decided to include 9/11 as part of your story, because I mean it's woven itself so clearly into it. How did you and Chris feel about dealing with this delicate subject? I mean, you've done an incredible job, and you know, I think the way that people have donated to ensuring that the book gets out there to the younger society and across the fire service worldwide is a sort of a demonstration of how well and how delicately you've dealt with this. But was there ever any sort of trepidation or concern about dealing with such a delicate subject?
Not really. No. We both wanted to get the story out of what happened to me in my career, and to get the message out to the young children that this is life. You know, you have to pick. You know, you have to pick up your pants and get out there. This is the hand that's dealt to you. No, really.
No, I mean, you talk about the hand that's dealt to you as well. Even since retiring for a second time, I mean, you've had another challenge. We've not even spoke about it yet, but one that arguably could be a book in itself. You're a cancer survivor as well, aren't you?
Yeah, that was kind of a difficult thing.
I love how easily you just brush that off. You're like, yeah, that was kind of a difficult thing. Well, you mean that terminal illness that takes so many people every single year? Yeah, I'd say that was a pretty big thing, Jerry. You know, let's not undersell that. That must have been, after everything you've been through and seeing so much tragedy, to have that come knocking on your door and the door of your family must have been pretty. How did that feel when you were given the news of that? And how did did it first start? How were you suffering? Because it was lung cancer, wasn't it?
I wasn't detected until 2007. That was 6 years after. Wow. And going back to 9/11, the government officials said, you don't have to put a mask on, and here we are walking through that cloud that we all saw.
Yeah.
I'd take a number of crews there, usually in the morning and then sometimes in the afternoon. And the administration, the government officials said, "No, you're okay. You don't need masks." Well, years later, in fact, we're still losing. I just got a notice 2 days ago. We lost another firefighter 20 years later from cancer-related illness. So it's still all these years, people are being detected from that crap that we ingested.
Well, I think it's going to be really common now. Really common now. I think for the next 15, 20 years, we're going to see so many cases coming up.
Without question.
And I hope that the fire community stays strong enough that even though these people have retired, we remember and recognize, and most importantly, support them, as they would, and that people like yourself did, came back into service and supported others. I really hope that if anybody, does hear this and they know of a firefighter that's retired and is struggling from an illness that's related to their operational capacity, there's lots of charities. I mean, if somebody's UK, there's the Firefighters charity that's out there, and I know there's a number of things in the US as well, because this is the sort of job that can catch you out long after you've left.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And I kind of remember that day going back. You just asked me, how did I feel? It was kind of well, how could that be me? It was 6 years later.
Yeah.
How could I wasn't coughing. I wasn't losing weight. The doctor says, yeah, we found something on your x-ray. Well, sure enough, that's what it was. And then I had 2 surgeries, but I'm still out there putting my pants on, Pete, and getting out and helping, You have to deal with it. That's life, and I think I'm stronger for it.
Yeah, man.
And
absolutely.
It came back in 2012, but I'm 9 years now cancer-free. So I'm very lucky.
Just remind. I know it's not the be-all and end-all, but just remind us again. How old are you, Jerry?
I'm 83 years old.
83. Jesus, man.
Yes.
I mean, you're also so with it, and what I mean by with it is mentally, and you know, I saw your partner. That was your partner that came on with us earlier, wasn't it?
That was Chris. That's my lady. Yeah, she's the author of the book.
Man, you are punching well above your weight. She is absolutely stunning. I'm not going to be so rude as to ask your partner's age, but you've clearly, I mean, maybe that comes from your days in the press, I don't know, but you've clearly got the gift of the gab. You can clearly talk your way into some good situations. I wanted to ask you sort of way back, you know, let's take it way back before the police and everything like that, because a big part of what we're able to give people on the podcast is that aspect of inspiration, because your story, you know, when I looked at the book and when I've sort of read through our notes and stuff, I feel incredibly inspired, and I'm sure many people will. The fact that you've overcome so much, and then even in this later stages of your life to overcome cancer and still be so full of life. Where did that come from? Who inspired you when you were a child?
Well, I had wonderful parents. My mother, she used to volunteer. That's why I refer to me in the helping people business. She drove for the blind. She drove and took food all over. I've been over 50 years, and like I said, in the helping people business. My brother was a school teacher. Wow. My two sisters were in education. So we're all four children. We all kind of followed in Mom by following her. And she used to tell me, she's told us all this. She'd say, Gerald, it doesn't cost anything to be nice to people. And Pete, I kind of carry that with me all my life.
I totally agree. And I always add on to the end of that. I would say it doesn't cost you anything to be nice, but it can cost you everything not to be. You know, it takes you so much just to hold the door for 2 seconds, just to say, please, say thank you. If you don't do it, it gives people such an insight into your values and your morals and your upbringing. If you don't value other people's time and other people's value of themselves, then how can you ever expect it to be given back to you? It can cost a lot, you know, and I really want to make a massive point about that, because especially even in the fire service, it's always the small things that make the big difference, I think. They do.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I got my training, you know, with my, you know, she was Girl Scouts, me with Cub Scouts. I mean, you know, it was always hands-on with her children, you know. I feel that's what we have to do out there in society, is be involved with our children. I talk to a lot of these young firefighters. We have a fire academy over here, and I tell them, don't tell anybody what we have. And they look at me like I'm nuts. And I tell them, we have the greatest job in the world, and leave it better than what you found it. They all look at me, and I tell them, you know what kind of profession we have? Every 4 years, there's a test to be a New York City firefighter, and they have 100,000 applicants. Wow. I said 100,000 applicants want to be a firefighter. Yeah. And our profession is incredible. You can go all over the world and just knock on the door to use the bathroom, a cup of coffee, or directions, and just tell them you're a firefighter. Man, let me tell you something. Yeah. It's I don't have to tell you, Pete. You know what I'm talking about.
Man, that's what has accidentally created the podcast. To be honest with you, Jerry, you know, is my absolute pleasure through some of the international work that I've been lucky enough to do with the podcast, is that realization that the passion and love I had isn't a UK thing, not at all. You know, if anything, I think it's stronger in some other places. But speaking to people from the US, from Germany, from Australia, from New Zealand, just that is that eternal and global family. I feel like no matter where you go, the pulse of the community almost finds its way back to the firehouse. That's where it lives. That's where. You know, and it's a massive responsibility, and we should feel privileged to be in that seat. Because like you sort of said there, you know, leave it better than you found it. It was here long before us, and it will be here long after we've gone. We are just filling a seat, and I don't say that to undersell it. What I mean is keep that seat well, you know, keep it working, keep it functional, keep it well kept. You know, make sure you add to the values, make sure you make decisions and take actions that uphold the very best parts of the entire community. What's best for the community is what's best for the fire department at the end of the day.
Exactly, Pete.
Now, you've had the privilege of working with some incredible leaders. You've acted in leadership roles yourself, from commissioners, talking to chiefs and all this sort of stuff. And you've really experienced leadership in, I mean, arguably, it's not a competition, but from my recollection, from any of the guests we've spoken to, you've dealt with leaders in some of the most challenging situations the fire department globally will perhaps have ever faced. But what have been some of the great characteristics and qualities that you've seen in these leaders?
I had the privilege of working with a number of chief officers that were really role models. One in particular, he was killed on 9/11. His name is William Bill Feehan. I met him when I was driving a chief in the 4-8 Battalion. He was a newly promoted battalion chief in the 3-1 Battalion. And he quickly rose through all the ranks, all the way up into, he was even acting fire commissioner for a time. And just following these men on how they acted and how they treated people, how they knew the job, I really was impressed with Bill Feehan and the number of the staff officers that I had the privilege of working with. You know, I got to meet a lot of dignitaries, presidents, cardinals, senators, all of that. But you know, it comes down to the chief officers and the firefighters that I got to know that were above me. I learned the job and I learned how to treat people. You know, when you get respect, Pete, is when you walk when you pull up to a fire scene and you go over to the command post and they turn around and they look, and because nobody wants to deal with the media. Nobody. No. Okay. And they would say, okay, it's all right, Jerry's here. And I don't mean that in any kind of a big deal way. No. It's just that's the respect that you earn, you know, by doing the best you can do. Yeah. And I was blessed to work with some wonderful men and women throughout all my years in the fire department. I learned from the best, I guess.
You've spoken, you know, really passionately, articulate around some incredible heroes during that aspect there. But I always think it's a bit of a trick sometimes when we speak about people in the emergency services being heroes. The act that they carry out is heroic, but so is, you know, so many things that everybody, you know, that people do every single day in the community. You know, doing a heroic act is accessible to anybody, but it doesn't mean that people in the emergency services don't get scared sometimes, you know, because like you said, you're running into a burning building when everyone else is running out. So looking back over your career now, I wanted to ask you if you'd ever had those moments. You know, was there a moment where you ever felt scared, or were you ever afraid when you were in the job?
Oh, sure. Oh, my God. Yeah. I was in a truck company, and I'd have the roof a lot of times. And, you know, when you're in an engine company, as you know, Pete, you have a bunch of guys pulling the hose. Yeah. But when you're in a truck company, you operate separately. So you're by yourself. So you really have to have your wits about you. And there was a couple of times where my job was to get to the roof. I don't care how you get there, but get to the roof and open it up. And I was stuck. I couldn't get the scuttle cover open. And there was some times I was like, wow, I guess this is it. And the smoke is just blowing up, and I somehow got out of there. But and I got knocked out. I got knocked out in a couple of jobs, and I had to have oxygen. But
you got knocked out? What, as in you just collapsed, or you knocked your head, or something?
I just took a little too much smoke, and they pulled me out. I mean, I wasn't unconscious or anything like that, but I just got dragged out, and they put the resuscitator on me, and they brought me around. I wasn't, but there was some times that it was a little hairy. I mean, there's nothing like getting the adrenaline going when you pull up and the fire, or as we used to say, the Red Devil, it's blowing out the windows. Yeah. And you're like, oh boy, we got a good job here. I mean, can you imagine? I'm just saying, we got a good job here.
It's so backwards thinking for most people when you hear, you know, went to a great job last night. It was a, you know, road traffic collision, and one was trapped and another was dead, and they're like, well, how's that great? I always say to people, because it's difficult for them to, you don't wish this stuff to happen upon anyone, but it's going to happen. You know, human error is everywhere all over the world now, and we're so distracted, more so than we ever have been now, that these things are going to happen. We don't want them to necessarily happen, but they're going to happen. But I think we're so privileged in the emergency services to be the person that when they're having the worst day of their life, Jerry is the person they call, you know, Dave, Sally, you know, that is the person. Yeah. They ring you because they expect you to fix the worst day of their life. That's a privilege.
That's right. Here comes the cavalry, you know, and we're there. We were just up to the South Bronx last week. We went back to visit the helmet in the firehouse, and the box comes in, and there I am. I'm standing at the back. I almost swung on the back of the rig, and Chris is having a heart attack. He's screaming at me, "Don't you dare!" I was like, "Wow, Pete!" I almost got on. I had a couple of runs. I almost got on and went with them, you know.
Mate, but it would have been worth it. It'd have been worth it. I'm sure you'd have had some value to add.
83 years old. There I am going to a fire. I mean, come on.
So, I mean, Jerry, as we sort of just bring it to a close now, my man, I always love this question because, I mean, there's advice all over our conversation today. There's so many big takeaways, but I just wanted to button hook it and close by asking, you know, what advice would you give to somebody that was joining the fire department now, and what do you think makes those great essential characteristics of a firefighter?
Pete, I'm glad you asked that question, because at night we're on this social thing called TikTok, and I get a lot of questions from these young firefighters.
Yeah.
And I tell them, keep your ears open and your mouth shut. Okay? Right off the bat, hang out with the older firefighters. Get into your training manuals and your brochures and all of the training things that you have to learn and study, and stay in shape physically and mentally. This is a young man's job, you know, not for 83 years old, but for a young man. And hang out with the old guys and learn from them. Again, try to make the job better than what you find it now. And when you walk out of the firehouse, that's not the end of your helping duties.
Absolutely not.
Help, volunteer. There are plenty of other agencies or plenty of people out there that could use a pat on the back or a help up, you know, a hand up, and do that, you know, and help your community. And that's why we are a treasure in our communities, because we just don't take our boots off, put them on, get changed, and go home. No. There's more to helping people than just riding on a rig. Absolutely love it.
Thank you, Jerry. I've absolutely loved our time.
There she is, the ball.
There she is.
Oh, wait, how do we do
I just wanted to see Chris again, to be honest. I mean, you can leave me and Chris alone if you want, Jerry.
Hey, baby. He's trying to get you.
Yeah, damn right. I said, I don't know what you're doing right. He must just have that gift of the voice. He's just been able to get hold of you. Crikey.
I'll tell you a funny story. Right before I met him, my son asked me what I was looking for, and I turned into this ridiculous woman, and I was like, well, definitely nobody from New York City, nobody that was a first responder, definitely not a cop.
No.
Definitely not a firefighter.
No, definitely not a cop, you know, but firefighters, they're the best.
No facial hair. And then I went out with him, and then here we are.
There we are.
Years later.
Guys,
Pete,
I just wanted to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day.
You.
I've got so much from that. You know, we spoke about spending time with old firefighters, and I know you use that term, but you're right. You know, people come into the job clean and they leave dripping with experience. My hope is always, what I'm trying to like create here is like these little time capsules. Do you know what I mean? And they'll live forever. You know, even probably after I'm gone, it will be there. And my hope is people will be able to come back and listen to Jerry's story and you know, and know that, you know, these were people fighting for what they felt was right and trying to make a difference with their unique skill set. So thank you, Chris, thank you, Jerry. I really, really appreciate that. Thank you so much. I'll speak to you soon. All right, take care of yourselves. Bye bye. Well, boys and girls, how do you like them apples? That was Jerry, and of course, my latest crush, that was his good partner, Chris. Guys, I know this is an audio platform, but I'm telling you right now, Jerry is punching above his weight. Chris is stunning. All right, Chris is absolutely stunning. I'm going to be sure to be staying in contact with Chris and Jerry. No, I'm sure, hopefully you took so much from that episode. Man, I loved it. I love hearing about that period of time. You know, I live as the eternal optimist, seeing what good aspects and the morals and the values that have made it through to the fire department and the fire service that we see today. So once again, if you want to get hold of Jerry Sanford's book, I sincerely cannot recommend it enough. We're going to drop the link to the book in this episode notes. So look down right below now. There will be the link to Jerry's book. It started with a helmet of retired firefighters returned to New York City the day before 9/11. And all that's left to say for myself is thanks to you, the listener. Yes, you've been here as well with us. You have been the third wheel in this conversation. How was it for you? Reach out to me, reach out to Jerry. You know, we're going to put his details in here below as well. If you have any questions for us, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you for coming back to the Firefighters Podcast. I hope you've taken some value from today. I hope it left you feeling optimistic, feeling proud. I know I do. I feel proud every day of the people that are out there on the front line, kicking ass, taking names, doing what's necessary to keep us all safe. And you can help share their stories. So take a snap of this, take a screenshot, share it on your social media platforms. Don't be selfish. If you've enjoyed today's episode, if you're still listening, you owe it to us, you owe it to yourself. Share this with somebody else. Thank you so much for coming back, and I will see you again real soon right here on the Firefighters Podcast.